I'm going to focus just first on the political issue. A few of you spent some time talking about, one of you referred to it, that I think Dr. Milani is sort of a purgatory, an uncertainty. Dr. Maloney and Kareem Sajapur spoke about how this thing might play out. But let me try and push you. You're experts, so you're supposed to predict when you don't know. Is the near-term existence, I mean, I took it, at least some of you were approaching the point of saying the next near-term existence of the regime is in question. And is the opposition movement more about restoring the legitimacy and integrity of the regime or about a regime change? A few of you who want to take that up, start with that.
I think the opposition, in my mind, is divided about in two groups. Some, like Rafsanjani, are more moderate. Rafsanjani, I think, wants a more refined version of the status quo. Mousavi and the rest of them, although they have not articulated it, I think want a return. Some of them have implicitly said it. They want a return to the first draft of the Constitution. People forget the first draft of the Islamic Constitution did not have the concept of Velayat Faqih, where one spiritual ruler has absolute sway. The first draft of the Constitution was, in fact, a Republican draft. Only when Khomeini realized that the opposition is weak, only when he realized that the crisis and the American hostage crisis and the war with Iraq has created for him a situation, they ran through the parliament, the Constituent Assembly, this provision of the law. I think that concept is now dead because Rafsanjani's words are no longer accepted. And many of the top clerics in Iran, Shiism has a very strong, peculiar structure. There are ayatollahs and there are lower figures, Hujjatul Islams. The ayatollahs have almost universally, with the exception of two, spoken against the status quo, spoken against the suppression, have considered it a sin to beat on innocent people. One old Ayatollah, Mr. Montazeri, has basically issued a fatwa that says Mr. Khomeini no longer has the virtue, the capacity to hold the position that he has. So the crisis, I think, is a very serious crisis for the regime as we know it. But whether a democratic alternative will come out of it as we understand democracy is the unknown.
Anyone else want to come in on this?
I would say in general that pre-election, this was a referendum on Ahmadinejad. Post-election, I think this is a referendum in many ways on Ayatollah Khamenei himself. And in general terms, Abbas is right that the opposition, I think, casts a very wide net. There's a diversity of opinions. But I would say, broadly speaking, they want to see the disempowerment of the unelected institutions in Iran, namely the institution of the Supreme Leader and the Guardian Council, and the empowerment of the elected institutions, namely the institution of the presidency and the parliament.
I think that gets to the nature of your question. The near-term continuation of the regime, what kind of regime will it be? Clearly, the de facto opposition leaders, the four political figures, Rafsanjani, Khatami, Mousavi, and Karoubi, who are the kind of nominal leaders of what we're calling an opposition, are not people who are looking to move beyond the system. They're looking for some substantial, greater or lesser in some cases, modification of the system, much as Khatami sought to do when he was president. What he has talked about is not dissimilar from what he tried to do in terms of limiting the office of the Supreme Leader and elevating and empowering the elective offices of the Iranian system. What the population wants, I think, is still unclear. The protesters in the aftermath of the election tried very hard to make it clear that they were not, in fact, challenging the system. They focused their grievances on the election itself. But once you begin to attack the office of the Supreme Leader, once you begin to say Marg Bar Khamenei or Ahmadi Raft, reprising one of the famous headlines in the newspaper in 1979 about the Shah, I think you begin to raise questions about the longevity of this system. They're not short-term questions, though.
If I may just quickly add, those who stormed the Bastille were loyal subjects of the king. I don't think that's how the French Revolution turned out. These things have a dynamic, and if Khomeini goes because of protests, expect further change.